ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MKUltra show. I, of course, as always, am your host, Carter M. Nelson. We've got a big show tonight. Great show on Friday. It is July 17th, and man, it's the end of the week. I'm very excited to be back with all of you tonight, and very excited for this show because man, is it a big one. Massive. One of the biggest shows ever, one might say, on all of the internet. Back to talking about the Iran war, and it's becoming quite a reoccurring theme on the show as of late. It's starting to seem. Might as well start talking or calling the show just the Iran war show at this point, because it seems like almost every night this is what we're talking about. And I apologize for it seeming so predictable at this point. But on the bright side, I can say, I mean, if you guys ever want updates about the Iran war, you want to know what's going on, if you want somebody to tell you what's going to happen in the Middle East, not yesterday, but what's going to happen a week from today, this has become the show to do it because I think I've become maybe the most consistent creator on the topic. And not to toot my own horn, but man, have my predictions been accurate time and time again. It is seeming. So, big show tonight. Very, very excited. But before I go ahead and start to get into it, I would like to ask all of you, please like and subscribe. It greatly helps out. Share the video, share just the channel. It helps build the movement, and it's something I want you to be a part of. So let's keep having some motion here. This is the end of our third week in a row, no days off. So, hell yeah. Hell yeah. We've got so much motion on this side. It's something that nobody else can understand. The level of motion that we have. So, amen to that. So yeah, please just help keep the motion going because it's a fun time. Before I get directly into the major things going on over in the Middle East, because believe me when I tell you they are major, and I'm going to reveal a lot of information that I have a feeling a lot of you have not heard yet. So excited to get into that. But I've got a few other stories to talk about. You know, we got to keep a little bit more of a positive energy going. Good times are running. Right away, let's just talk about Clavicular for a second. Can we just take a moment to dissect everything going on with him because there was a pretty major breaking thing where he goes over to Israel, and I don't think I've really talked about it yet. And with new details coming out about what transpired over there, I feel the need to give a take on it because it's it's hilarious. It's hilarious. So to give you a background, Clavicular, he goes to Israel, essentially what seems to be a propaganda campaign. He goes there, he reportedly may or may not have met with some of Netanyahu's advisors. He's going to the clubs. He's showing that it's just a fun time over there. The war isn't. It's not terrible. It's just a fun time over there. But where it starts to break down is he goes on to this interview with one of their news stations, and immediately the news anchor tries to grill him. He's immediately trying to grill him on what has been dubbed the Clubocost, and he's going at him. He's like, "How can you sing this? Don't you think you owe us an apology?" And Clav says, "No, no, you owe me an apology. You owe me an apology for me singing that because I wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for behavior like this. Why can't you be positive? Why don't we try to be positive? I'm the only one coming over here doing anything positive for your nation, and you want to come at me? No, you should apologize to me." So that was hilarious. And the anchor just keeps on going, and eventually you can tell Clav is over it. So he throws his headphone on the ground and he storms out of there and he says, "I'm leaving. I'm never coming back here," pretty much destroying this entire propaganda campaign. And the new information that came out, and man, is this good, is so during his time there on stream, he's hanging out with this IDF agent, and she is one of the heads of their spokesperson unit, and she has access to the IDF official TikTok and everything. And Collab's trying to make a video on there. She's on stream. He implies he's bringing her back to his hotel room And now a statement has come out, and I'm going to read this off for you real quick. IDF soldier Sharia Braun, who served in the military's international spokesperson unit responsible for managing the IDF social media presence, is facing disciplinary action after appearing in an extended live stream with American influencer Braden Eric Peters, known online as Clavicular. So, this chick is now not only one of the things that happened is she lost her position. Reports are saying that she's been downgraded to a position as a cook now. So she lost everything she had going for her in her career, and she's never going to get that back. And she may face further prosecution. So let's detail what Clav did over his time in Israel. He goes there, he chews them out for him being anti Semitic, which was hilarious. He leaves, says he's never coming back. During his time there, he hangs out with an IDF agent, gets her fired, and now she's under investigation. It's so funny. It's so funny. Like, I'm not supporting what he did. I don't necessarily think Clev is some great person. I don't know him personally, so I can't comment too much, but I mean, I think he's pretty self-indulgent, right? His entire value system comes from what will get him ahead. So that's a pretty major thing for him. And so, I mean, politically, maybe not our best guy, but man, is it funny. Man, is it fucking hilarious. It's so funny. In other news, Dan Blazarian continues also to be something that we can continuously laugh at, which, I love guys like these low IQ anti Semites, not because they help our movement, but because, man, is it a white pill to just laugh at them. Like, when things are going down for us, when it's not looking so good, when we're losing the fight, when our government is betraying us in favor of Israel, at least we have the Dan Bilzerians of the world to just laugh at and mock. And so, 24 hours, so yesterday, Dan Bilzerian decides, oh, maybe it's time to tell my supporters that they need to register as a Republican to vote for me. Yeah, yeah. So he did that for the first time. He tells his supporters that they need to register Republican. He does that with literally 24 hours before the deadline. So either he forgot or he just didn't think it was important to mention. It's like, how can you claim to be running a serious campaign? It's hilarious. He's criticizing guys like Nick because he's like, at least I'm out in the field doing something. You just sit in your basement. It's like, well, Nick is inspiring people to do it the right way and to infiltrate, to gain a little bit of power and influence, and then take over through the inside, essentially. Nick is basically sharing the hidden truths with the masses and destroying his ability to ever run a political campaign. But simultaneously to this, he is actually inspiring the masses to be quiet about their support for him so that they can actually push to make legitimate change, right? So what he's doing is he's walking so the people after him can run and actually change the nation, while Diane Blazarian is making a fool out of himself. So who's really doing something? Who's really accomplishing something? And something that was brought to my attention is just I have to read this off for you. This comes directly from Dan Bilzerian's campaign page. America first, not as a slogan or a catchphrase, but actually America first. Endless foreign wars. Stop sending money overseas while Americans struggle. Secure our borders. Cut government blow and corruption. But most of all, put an end to Jewish supremacy. I can't even read that with a straight face. I can't do it. I can't do it. But most of all, put an end to Jewish supremacy. That is somebody trying to run for office. That is on his official campaign page. He thinks that's going to resonate with the majority of Floridian voters. Put an end to Jewish supremacy. Are you serious, man? You think that'll work? Like, look, guys like me might find that funny and be like, okay, maybe. But it's not a serious campaign. It's not a serious slogan, you know? You know what I'm saying? It's just there's nothing serious about it. Sounds like something that I would put when I was in like 8th grade in like a mock election because I think it's funny and it doesn't matter. Guess what? You're playing with the big dogs. You're playing in a world where it matters, where the voters are all adults who are moderately rational and don't vote because something's funny. So you can't win an election by being, oh, I gotta put an end to Jewish supremacy. Dude, it's not gonna work. No, you need to make actual campaign promises. You can't just say, oh, no more of that. Because guess what? People tend to not like that. People tend to look at that and be like, oh, I don't know if I want to be associated with that. I don't know if I want this guy leading us. Which honestly, I agree with them, to be honest. That sounds like somebody that isn't serious, and I don't necessarily want unserious people in politics. Like, here's the thing you have to understand about the political world is you kind of have to be a lawyer, right? That's why so many of our politicians, they come from law backgrounds. Many of them go to school and they study law. Many of them come from Yale, Harvard, institutions that specialize in that. And why is that? Because law teaches you legal jargon. It allows you to speak well, to be serious. Guess what? When you speak like that, it tells me that you don't know how to actually speak on their terms, which means you won't ever be able to get anything done. So voting for you would be a complete waste because not only will nobody else vote for you because you sound like a retard, but simultaneously, if by some miracle you get in, I'm not convinced that you care enough or have done enough work to be able to make a difference. I'm not convinced that you have an ability for this, that you care enough about this, that you care like I do, that you care like the people who aren't even running for office care. So you can't just run a joke of a campaign. But yeah, I mean, it's a black pill being like, man, these people make us look fucking retarded. But it's kind of a white pill to laugh at their retardation. It's like it's a mixed bag. It's such a mixed bag. You just have to you got to kind of look at it like a glass half full. You know, like sure they might be destroying our movement, but at least we can laugh at them while they do it. Man, that's actually this is blackpilling me now. I'm gonna be honest. This is the statement I just made is blackpilling me. It's like, well, all we have is we get to laugh at the retards while they destroy everything we've worked so hard to build. Fuck, man, fuck. All right, I gotta get off this topic. Now we gotta go to the actual black pill of the day is the escalation going on throughout the Middle East. Right. And so what we have is I've been talking about this a lot. I'm sure most of you listening, if you've seen the previous shows, but you really should, because I told you all this was going to happen before it did. But as I reported before it happened, the ceasefire ended. The ceasefire it's gone. The MOU has completely fallen apart, not even a month after it was signed. So we have that. We have an escalation in attacks from both Iran and the US, which is resulting in the entire region starting to blow up. Tensions are raising across it, and that's what we're going to be talking about and focusing on tonight and how that affects you and me. So, something you have to understand about Iran's strategy throughout this is essentially it's been wait out the United States, see how long they can take the economic turmoil that they can force through their strain they've managed to put on all of energy in the global market by blocking off the Strait of Hormuz. So that's one. One of their strategies is playing the waiting game. Their other strategy is when the US escalates, they beat them in escalation. So the US launches an assault, Iran will strike harder, essentially. So basically, their goal here is to make the US not feel confident in striking, making them decide that the risks aren't worth involvement, and also forcing them to wait out the economic turmoil that has been caused. So those two are the big ones. That's the entire Iranian strategy. And that's what you have to understand to be able to recognize why this conflict is actually escalating in the nature that it is. Now, to give you a little bit of information on what may lead me to believe that this conflict is escalating. One, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, a group which typically functions in the Pacific region, was created for the Pacific region. It is essentially a unit that focuses on maritime activities. They are considered, I believe, an air ground unit. That's what they specialize in. So it's a unit of about 2,000, a little over 2,000 Marines, and they've been moved. They were previously stationed out of California, and now they've been moved into the Middle East region. That happened over the last week. So, what does that mean? That means that the US is preparing to ramp up its efforts to blockade the ports of Iran. And how are they doing that? Well, they are forcibly intercepting ships attempting to go into Iranian ports and leave Iranian ports. And so when a ship does it, they can forcibly redirect them. And when they do that, it also encourages other ships to avoid that. So what this unit will likely be used for and what they are being geared up for is to increase rating on Iranian ships. The US, it recently posted a photo of them raiding a ship or boarding a ship more specifically. But yeah, this unit will be used to Iranian ships are coming in. This unit can be deployed onto these ships, raided, forcibly redirected. And why did the US want to do this? Well, it helps put economic pressures on Iran. So while they're playing the waiting game with us by destroying our economic facilities, or faculty, I should say, our economic faculty, we are trying to do that in reverse. So we blockade the ability of ships to actually enter and leave their ports to constrain trade and also stop them from being able to import weapons which can be used to deter future United States assaults, more specifically missile assaults. So that's one way that this conflict it's clearly escalating. And something else that was pretty massive happened was earlier today. Iran, they launched missile strikes on a water desalination plant in Kuwait. And so this strike ended up damaging a power facility along with the desalination plant. Now, what's the importance of this plant? What does it do? Well, essentially, what it does is it takes water and it removes the salt water to make it so their people can drink it. Because the Middle East is an incredibly dry region, so they have to be able to take from the sea, take water off of their coast, and turn it into something that their population can drink from. So a strike on this plant, it's putting Kuwait at risk of being a position where they don't have enough water to go around for its civilians. So essentially, what this is an attempt at is creating a humanitarian crisis in Kuwait to de-encourage them from allowing further U.S. activities in the area. And that's what we've seen from Iran throughout this war. Strikes against Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar. Why are they doing this? Well, they want to give them an incentive to not allow the US to operate out of the area. They're saying, look, if the US is operating off of your coast and they are using that as a basis to launch military operations against us, you are involved in this war and we will respond. Because Iran's in a position where they can't actually strike the US directly, they have no way to. So their only option is to attempt to destabilize the regions which are currently housing US troops. And what this puts at risk of is as this conflict continues to escalate, is other nations being dragged in. Other nations which are currently housing US troops. This means we could see potential escalation in Syria. We could see potential escalation in Iraq. Both nations, which do have Iranian and militia groups, which could reasonably and feasibly launch assaults on U.S. military bases, which are currently and have been historically positioned there for anti-terrorism activities. And most likely is Jordan. We could see Jordan being dragged in. We've already seen some conflict in Jordan because Iranian missiles have to go through Jordan's airspace to reach Israel. And Jordan has responded by shooting these missiles down out of a fear of any of them affecting the Jordan populace. So what could happen is an escalation there, which could drag Jordan as a legitimate front into this war. So because of the US escalation and Iran's strategy of counter escalation and their strategy of hitting anybody where US troops are currently housed, they have an incentive to drag these other nations into the war. Because what does Iran want? Well, they want cultural hegemony across the Middle East. They want to be the superpower of the area. They want everything to go through them. They want economic control over the strait. They want to disencourage any other Middle Eastern country from threatening their position as the head of the Middle Eastern region. So, unsurprisingly, we are seeing an escalation across the region. And as this escalation grows, don't be surprised to see more nations pulled into it, which would inevitably result in a significant increase in destabilization across the Middle East, which could pull the US into a position where we have to send more troops there to contain the rising terrorist and destabilization threats in the countries which we have some kind of influence in their government. We have a very, very high incentive to keep some US control in the area because of the economic importance of the oil fields there. We have to have some influence on how those move throughout the Middle East. And that means we have to put pressure on the governments throughout there. So if we see Iran move to other nations, well, now we're in a position where we have to ramp up our military in the area. That's how you end up with a forever war right there. That is how it happens. In other news of the conflict, we are seeing maneuvers on the Yemen front. And the reason this matters is the other other strait that is positioned in the Middle East, which is now the primary mover of oil exports throughout the area because it can be moved throughout Saudi Arabia. And this is the Bab al Mandeb Strait. And now this strait has been kept open through the Saudis having diplomacy with the Houthis. Now, the Houthis are a group who they're an Islamic extremist revolutionary group in Yemen. And currently, through the Yemen civil war, they have control over southwestern Yemen, right? This is a conflict which has been going on since 2014. And Saudi Arabia originally was supplying significant military aid to the internationally recognized government of Yemen, which still occupies the northeastern territories. So, the way Yemen is split right now, the majority of the territory eastwards, it's all controlled by the government which is currently internationally recognized, right? The official government, the whole eastern section. And that section contains the majority of the land and the majority of the economic resources. So it's a much richer region. However, if we look westwards, the area which is currently controlled by the revolutionary group, the Houthis, that region contains the majority of the populace. And it is also the region that has control over the Bab al Mandeb Strait. Now, the reason this matters is the Houthis have historically had very poor relations with the Saudis. And just a few years ago, back in 2023, they were striking ships which were exporting oil through that strait in a very similar manner to how Iran is currently striking strips moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And what that does is it not only can prevent ships from being able to move due to being sunk, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Because when ships are uh, receiving missile strikes throughout these different straits, what happens? Well, it disencourages other captains to do the same, to allow their vessels to move through there. Because oil is expensive, the ships are expensive, it becomes a question of is it economically worth it to attempt to still maneuver through these areas? And there's also the risk of a cost of life when you have missile strikes hitting these different cargo vessels. So, by missile strikes, it essentially economically disencourages anybody from even attempting it. And that's what the Houthis were previously doing. However, they had a treaty made with the Saudis who allow for oil to be moved through that area. So, what there is in Saudi Arabia, it is the East West pipeline. And it's a pipeline that carries through all of Saudi Arabia. And previously, before the war, the Saudis were exporting a majority of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. So they were going through their eastward coast. But now, because of the escalation and them no longer being able to safely move oil through that port and through that region, what they have been forced to do is they bring oil from the eastward side of Saudi Arabia and they move it to the west, and they can go through the Red Sea and go through this Bab al Mandeb Strait. And that has essentially saved global oil in a way. We still see a significant decrease in the way oil is being able to be maneuvered and moved. However, it has given the rest of the world some ability to still buy and import Middle Eastern oil. Now, something important to understand about the Houthis is they are backed by Iran. And now the conflict is escalating. Now, the conflict originally escalated when the war with Gaza began, because the Houthis believe that they are tied with that. So there was escalation, but the tensions ended up simmering down. What happened recently with Saudi Arabia fired a missile strike on a Houthi airport. Why did they do this? Well, it was believed that the Houthis were trying to land in Iranian officials. So what they wanted to do was prevent this landing. They don't want to kill Iranian officials because that could drag them into the war. And the Saudi Arabians are currently in a rebuilding phase. They have faced immense economic struggles and have a goal of trying to essentially become more of a first world nation. They want to solve their economic turmoils, solve their stability issues, so they cannot deal with a war right now. So they won't strike any Iranians. But what they will do is strike an airport so that a plane can't land. And this is with the goal of preventing the Houthis and their Iranians being able to communicate efficiently and effectively, prevent diplomacy between the two, and prevent import from Iran into the Houthi controlled area of Yemen so that the Houthis can't gain supremacy where they are able to conquer the rest of Yemen. Because what they don't want to happen is to have a Houthi controlled southern border mate. That would be bad for them. What they want is to back the original government of Yemen. So to do this, historically, what they've been doing is essentially preventing the Houthis from freely moving in and out of Yemen and preventing Iranians from coming in. That has been the goal, to prevent transportation. So they struck this airport. Now, the Houthis got quite upset at this, understandably so, and they ended up striking an airport in Saudi Arabia. And this is increasing a recontinuation of the previous conflict. Now, Saudi Arabia has made it very clear that they have no interest in this. They do not want that to happen again. But the Houthis have also made it very clear that they want completely free travel and being able to move around between Yemen, Iran, and the rest of the world. They want to open up their international trade. They want to become a legitimate country, essentially. So, what is a legitimate possibility of this is the Houthis begin striking at ships moving out of the Red Sea. And this would close down that second port. Not completely, but it would slightly. This would prevent even more oil exports, which experts are saying, and this comes from the Wall Street Journal, experts are saying that could put the world into a global recession because we are already limited on our ability to import oil. which means that we are in an energy crisis, and this would just exacerbate it even more. This would deeply add to it. And again, historically, it's not unreasonable for them to do this. There is a legitimate historical precedent of them attacking ships moving through the region, and the reason they have to do this is they have legitimate incentive because they have a desire to be able to move in and out of airspace. That is their goal. So if they view that a way they can do that is by putting economic pressure on the world, by blocking oil maneuvers out of another major key port, maybe the most key area after the Strait of Hormuz, well, then they will likely begin doing what they have done in the past. And there's no better time for them to do it. If they close this port, it puts more pressure on the world than it ever has historically. This is their best chance to gain more leverage. This is the most leverage that they have ever had and likely ever will. So it's likely they will take advantage of this. So this could bring Yemen and this southern revolutionary group in Yemen into a broader conflict, which would result in the US having to move more naval vessels into that area to help protect cargo ships moving in and out. Because that's what the US Navy is essentially doing right now. They are in commercial support mode. Prevent strikes against commercial vessels to allow them to move. Currently, they are allowing them to move across the area bordering Oman, and they may have to do that down in Yemen as well now. And that backs what we are seeing with military movements into the area. Right now, currently, it's being reported that fighter jets are being transported into the area out of Europe. They are moving this Marine Guard out of the Pacific into the Middle East region to help support, both support cargo vessels and to help with the blockade on Iranian ports. So these things all align. They're all saying a greater escalation of the conflict. So yeah, that's the situation we are currently in. And this comes from the Washington Report. Workarounds have bought some time. Saudi Arabia has used the pipeline running across the Arabian Peninsula to export about 4 million barrels a day of crude oil via the Red Sea, keeping its overall exports around 4.6 million barrels a day. That is down from the 7.3 million barrels a day before the war, but the gap would be a lot wider without the Red Sea barrels. So, Saudi Arabia has managed, like it says, to still move about 4.6 million barrels of oil a day, thanks to their Red Sea coast. However, this could change with an escalation with their conflict with the Houthis. They are going to have a very high incentive to de escalate that, but they also have a very high incentive to not give in to all and any Houthi demands, which could include economic incentives for them to allow ships to move through that strait. It could also include allowing the Houthis to freely move in and out of the Iranian territories. This is a situation where they could very much so be seeing that that Iran has, in their eyes, outmaneuvered the United States in this conflict and use that as a leverage point. So that is one of the major ways that this war could see escalation. So we are risking right now escalation in Yemen, escalation lightly in Saudi Arabia would more of be US military campaigns. Very likely the Saudis would be greatly removed from this due to their extreme interests in staying out of the conflict overall. We are risking seeing an escalation, especially in Jordan, but also in Iraq and Syria, just because of US military positions in those areas and their significance and their bordering of Iran, Israel, Jordan, Turkey. This conflict has legitimate consequence. There is a chance of destabilization growing in these various countries. And Iran is still going to keep playing the same game, and we'll see how long they can last out. The question of this war isn't which military is stronger. That question is easily answered. It's the US. The question is which economy and which people are going to be willing to last this out for longer. The US isn't in a survival war here, and that's a key distinction. Iran is in what is in their eyes a survival war. So they are willing to go through immense economic pressures to continue the war going. The US people aren't. They're not going to be as willing to see their dollar become worthless as the Iranians are. A very different circumstance for the people. So the question again, it's not which military is stronger. We know the answer to that. We know we have the stronger military. It is purely who can withstand the economic pressures for longer. And that's something we're going to see, and that's going to play a decisive role in the decision on if this is a conflict which will escalate further. Does Iran feel that if they put pressure on more areas, such as the Red Sea, such as in Jordan, will those be able to crack the United States? If they put the world into a global recession through a group which they back in Yemen, if they can put the world into an economic recession, well, will that cause the US to have to back down on some of their demands? The Iranians' main goal is to get the US to back down. They're not trying to win, they're trying to hold out. And that's a key distinction. That's a very key distinction because they're in a survival war and we're not. So that plays a very, very massive factor on what the future of this conflict is going to look like, on who will back down first. Survival war. That's your word of the day. Straight from Carter Carter Nelson himself, survival war. Keep that in mind when you see anything about the escalation of this conflict. And if it does escalate, know that you heard it here first. If Yemen gets involved, know you heard it here first. And if we go into a recession, I warned you, and this is my advice to you, prepare for that. Because there is a legitimate chance that things keep getting worse. There is a legitimate chance that we are no longer able to export oil out of the Red Sea, which would almost certainly put us into a global recession. So prepare. This isn't me trying to fearmonger you. This is me trying to give you a warning based off the evidence I have seen. Because it would be unfair for me to keep that information to myself. So just be aware of the global circumstance. I'm not saying this is like going to destroy your life, but it can be life changing. So just be prepared. Be prepared for every possible circumstance and worst case scenario. The worst case scenario right now is looking like a global recession. So just be mindful of that. That's all I'm going to tell you. Be mindful of that possibility. Finally, now that we've covered the growing circumstances throughout Iran and the Middle East, I would also like to give a little bit of an update on the Save America Act. So, what is going on over there? What's going on with Save America? Well, as many of you know, it's passed the House, but the Senate doesn't seem to want to pass it. And the reason I'm talking about this now isn't because there's something crazy going on about it, but because I think it's incredibly important, and this might be the most important legislature that we have to pass before 2026, or sorry, before the election cycle of 2026, right? Before the new House is inaugurated. Because right now, what are things looking like? Well, it's looking like the Republican Party is going to lose the House, almost certainly. The bigger question is, can they retain the Senate? And even then, it's decently unlikely. What they might be able to retain is a 50-50, which would technically give them the majority with the vice president's vote, since they also control the executive branch. But what the Save America Act is outlining is essentially, well, if you want to vote in our elections, you have to prove yourself as an American citizen, which seems pretty reasonable. We want to get rid of mail-in voting for those who are capable of not, which I think is a totally fair provision. Like, if you don't care enough to leave your house to go vote, then you don't care enough to get to vote. That's my viewpoint on it. Like, if you can't make the time to go vote, then you just don't care enough. And if you don't care enough, why are you voting in the first place? That would be quite unreasonable, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, right? That seems like a totally fair point to make, but I guess not to the Democrats. So getting rid of mail-in vote to mail-in voting, while also saying that you have to prove U.S. identification to vote, which also seems totally reasonable. Why would that be an issue? Fine. Why would that be an issue? If you aren't in favor of foreigners voting, why would you be opposed to making it so only U.S. citizens can vote? Right? That seems like an evident idea. Maybe it's crazy. Maybe I'm the crazy one, but I feel like anybody who isn't in favor of foreigners voting would say you have to prove that you're not a foreigner to vote. That seems reasonable. Totally reasonable. And that's why it passed the House. But the issue we're seeing in the Senate is they have all these kind of regulations where they say, oh, well, you can't break the filibuster unless you have over 60, unless it's an economic vote. Well, we're not past 60, I'll tell you that. The Republicans, while they have control over the Senate, it is not deep enough to break the filibuster. And while some have proposed, including the executive branch with the vice president and the president himself, both saying, hey, let's just skip the filibuster and do this vote because legally you can pass this at 50 and it's something we need to get done. There's too many Republicans who are saying we're not willing to do that. We're not willing to break the filibuster. It's something that is agreed upon. How do you feel about the economic and political state of the world right now? We're going to shit, brother. You know, the more I look at it, the more I'm like, shit, we're actually fucked. Like, there was a time where I was like, nothing ever happens. And then you look at it, it's like everything's happening right now. Everything's happening about it. Politically, we're screwed, which is what I'm talking about at the moment. And economically, we are screwed, which is what I was talking about with Iran. We are on the precipice of a global recession if the transport routes out of the Red Sea get shut down, like I'm saying, is very, very likely to happen. So again, prepare for extreme economic constraints on both yourself and your family in the coming month because the tension is rising, it's getting dangerous. So be very aware of that. But back to my point about what's going on in the Senate right now. There is a push to potentially change the bill in a way that would make it fit under economic requirements because when voting on the economy essentially for anything that does with economics it's only a 50 to pass while major changes to law are 60. So if they can put in economic language into this act they could potentially pass it with 50 while still staying with the original confines of what the Senate believes. So yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. There's still Republicans pushing back on even that because it's not fair. It's not fair. We can't do that. It's like, look, this might be the Trump administration's opportunity to have one good thing happen. One good thing. That's all I'm asking for. One good thing to come out of all of this. And this would be it, the Save America Act. It would be something that this administration can put their name on and say, hey, we're the ones that ensured safer elections, which is something that is necessary. As earlier, we saw reports come out and declassified documents about potential international interference in our election cycles. And there is legitimate evidence. There is legitimate evidence of tampering coming out of China, which says, hey, maybe we need stricter and greater levels of safeguards on our elections because they're too easily influenced. So this is something that is incredibly necessary for the future of our nation. And the reason it needs to be passed before 2026 is, as I said before, it is very likely the Republicans will lose the House following this election cycle, and there's a chance they will lose the Senate. And the Democrats have consistently all voted against the idea that we should safeguard our elections, that you should have to prove to be a US citizen to vote in US elections. They have all voted against this. So if we lose the House, there's a chance we don't get an opportunity to pass a bill like this again until 2032. And even that, it could be closer to 2036. We could be looking at anywhere between 6 to 8 years before we have another opportunity for anything like this again. Like, here's the thing. If we lose the House, we absolutely will not be able to pass this before 2028. 2028, there's a very legitimate chance, unless things change drastically, that the executive branch goes to the Democrats, which would allow for this bill to be blocked. And also in 2028, there is a legitimate chance that the Democrats are able to hold their foothold in the House and are also able to gain even further in the Senate. Now, if they win in 2028 in the presidency, they will hold that until 2032. And it is increasingly difficult to move an incumbent out of office, which could mean that we are faced with a Democrat in the presidency until 2036. Now, with the greater revolutionary ideas being spread within the youth, there is the argument that, hey, we're moving to an era where incumbents move in and out more often, which has been what we've seen since 2016. However, it will still be difficult to remove a Democrat if they win in 2028, which means that could push the timeline to securing our elections until 2036, another decade from now. And think about it like this: if we can't secure our elections, it'll allow for even more interference. And as illegal immigration grows, which under a Democratic president, it will grow even further. It'll mean more of our elections go to Democrats on the very basis that they use the votes of illegal immigrants to win. Meaning it's potential that failing to pass this act before 2026 could have drastic consequences on our ability to vote our way out of this for the entirety of the future of our nation. That's what makes it so important, and that's why Republicans need to get their shit together and pass this while we have a majority in the House, in the Senate, in the Supreme Court, in the executive branch. When we own all three branches of the government, it seems ridiculous that we can't get such crucial legislature passed. Like, what are we doing? And we're playing games with it. And it's like, look, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of just playing games. I don't want to just jerk off the entire time we're in office. Can we at least finish the job? I'm tired of jerking it. Let me finish. Oh man, it's a joke. I present it in a joke, and it's not to make a mockery out of the situation, but it's because it's a situation which deserves to be mocked. Like, can we get something done? We have control. Let us do one good thing before we lose it in 2026. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous situation we've put ourselves in. So yeah, that's my message for tonight. But it's been a great week of shows. I'm gonna start to wrap it up now. If you guys have any questions or anything else you'd like to hear my thoughts on before I end the stream, please ask now. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that if you would like. And I'll do a quick overview of the stream over that time. But before I do that, please like the video again. Again, it greatly helps the channel. It helps boost it so that we can get our voice out to the greater public. So maybe we can induce the change that this nation needs. Please subscribe as well. It greatly helps out, and it'll ensure you never miss a live show. I know I've said that I will start clipping these so you don't have to watch whole streams to see my ideas, which I will do, and I've done on occasion, but this weekend I am committing to trying to clip up all the streams from this week. That way you do have valuable information from me, and you don't have to watch an hour stream to get it. So, yep, that will be coming soon over the weekend. Again, just to recap everything we've talked about, the Middle East tensions are rising more than ever. Prepare for a global recession, depending on what the Houthis out of Yemen decide to do. Stay on the lookout for a reactivation of the ongoing civil war there and the broader conflict with Saudi Arabia, along with the revolutionary groups out of Yemen. Be aware the U.S. is moving greater forces into the Middle East region. Again, they are moving, what was it, the 11th? Let me check again before I say something that is incorrect. Yes, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit out of the Pacific Front, which is a clear signal for the preparation of a gearing up of this war, which Donald Trump, based off of what people around him have been reporting to the media, is preparing for a reactivation of total war in the area. They are, in fact, moving fighter jets to the area, which can and very likely will signal for this total war idea that I've been talking about. Be prepared to see Jordan, Iraq, Syria, any of these nations being dragged into the conflict. A humanitarian crisis is likely inevitable in some of these Gulf countries with the strikes we are seeing. Again, Kuwait, be on the lookout for a humanitarian crisis there, as the Iranian strikes may prevent them from being able to process drinking water for their people, which could drag them into a position where no longer can they allow for U.S. forces to operate out of the area, out of a very, very high risk towards the people there. Also, that puts immense pressure on Bahrain and Qatar as they see what's going on in as they see what's going on in Kuwait. It may pressure them into backing out. Again, it's all a waiting game. This whole war, it's a waiting game. Who can withstand the pressure for longer? And we will see how this develops. Is the US is the reason we are gearing up for a higher escalation is because we're running out of time and we're running out of willingness to play the waiting game. So we are trying to force Iran to back out before we are forced to. So the question is, can we get Islamic revolutionaries who are willing to die for this to stop before they're all dead? And my answer is likely no. Likely we cannot end this war prematurely without a ground campaign. So that is my take on all of this. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless you. May He look kindly upon you. Y'all have a great weekend. I will be back for the show on Monday. Again, be on the lookout for clips throughout the weekend. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I greatly appreciate it. And so long. Peace out, and God bless y'all.